Hello again, Dave Specter with Fret 12's Blues and Beyond, and we're thrilled today to be joined by one of the legends of funk and R&B guitar from the Meters, Leo Nocentelli. Leo, man, it's great to have you here.
Great to be here. Thank you for having me.
On the coldest day of the year in Chicago.
I love it, man. I live in Los Angeles. You know, I'm from New Orleans, where there's seasons.
Yeah.
LA don't have seasons, man.
Right, man.
You know, it's like the redundancy of great weather could get to you. You know, everybody say, "Oh, it's great," but you know, too much of anything is just. I like change, man. That's the way I came up. So coming here, I'm digging on this.
Cool, man.
Yeah.
So you grew up in New Orleans, born and raised there?
Oh yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. I go back there sometime now, man. When I go sometimes 3, 4, 5 times a year.
Yeah.
Whenever they have a major function out there, they call me. And I go and I can't believe that I was born and raised in that place. Amazing city.
Yeah.
You know, if I have to say so myself.
Yeah, it's one of the most soulful musical places ever. You know. So when did the Meters start? When did you first start hook up with the Meters?
Well, actually, we Art Neville had a band called the Hawkettes, and I was, you know, a young guy, you know, 16, 17 years old. So Art heard me, you know, around town. He asked me if I wanted to play with the Hawkettes. So I joined the band, played around a while, and we could kind of separate, start using different musicians. And there was a gig we had got at a club called a Nightcap with Art Neville, myself, and a bass player by the name of Richard Amos, and a drummer by the name of Glenn. I can't remember Glenn last name. Glenn died. But after we played this club, we Richard had to leave to go to the Army. He got drafted. This was, you know, drafted for Vietnam. So we got George Porter, you know, and you know, then George started playing with us. Then Glenn, the drummer, died. Then we recruited Zig.
Yeah. And
the band was called Art Neville and the Neville Sound, you know, for a bunch of years. And we went from the Nightcap to a club called the Ivanhoe in the French Quarters. And we was playing there, man. We was playing like 6 nights a week, every night, man, you know, like one of those kind of deals.
Yeah.
And there was a song, we were playing like top 40 stuff.
Okay.
You know, this was before it was even called the Meters.
This was in early 60s?
This was like in 60, yeah, it was 66, 65, something like that. I just got out of the Army. And so we, there was a song everybody played, and you might remember this, a song called Hold It.
Sure.
Everybody opened up their set with that, man.
Really?
We were doing that too, right?
That's funny because that's become like the classic break tune.
Yeah, yeah.
You know?
But we would open our set and I said, man, I'm sick of playing that song, you know? And everybody played it, so there was a melody that I've been in my head, man, for years. And I said, I went to George, Art, and Zig, you know, we was playing together as the Neville song. I said, hey man, listen to this, and I wanted, maybe we could open our sets with this. And I showed him the melody, and Alan Toussaint and his partner came and Ivanhoe and heard us, because we was, you know, playing, so they heard us opening our set with this song. They said, hey man, what's that? I said, we don't have no name for it. So we went in the studio and recorded it. And in 2 weeks, man, it sold like 200,000 copies. And then we named it, you know, and I called it Sissy Strut.
Yeah, why'd you name it Sissy Strut?
It was a dance.
Okay.
It was actually a dance. It was a dance called, there was something early called a Sophisticated Sissy.
Right.
And then your Sissy Strut, it was actually a dance.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you about Alan as well as other, you know, legendary New Orleans music figures. So did Alan produce the Meters? I know, did you use his studio?
On paper, yeah. Okay. He was our producer, but physically, no.
Okay.
You know, he was never, we kind of, after we had signed a contract with them as our producers, we kind of got into like a little spat in the studio, and we couldn't work with him, and he couldn't work with us, you know, for whatever the reason. And so we couldn't get out of the contract, so we, you know, had to fulfill our obligation of recording the album. So we was producing the stuff ourselves.
Got it.
You know.
And did you play on a lot of sessions, other sessions that Alan produced?
Yeah. I played on when I was like, well, I've been playing with Alan way before the Meters, when I was 14, 15 years old. Yeah, I was doing sessions with Alan, man, long before the Meters or whatever. There was a song, Yeah.
Yeah.
That's me on that. Yeah. And I was like 14, 15 years old.
Lee Dorsey?
Yeah, Lee Dorsey, yeah. And I started doing all the other stuff, Olatimo and all those songs, and working in the coal mine. Get Out My Life, Woman, Ride Your Pony. Lee Dorsey was pretty hot, man. And then I started doing stuff when he started producing Cato Mother-in-Law. I did Mother-in-Law. So a bunch of New Orleans, you know, standard hits, man.
Did you play in Lee Dorsey's band when he was? No, just the studio stuff.
Yeah, Lee. I can't really remember Lee even had a band. Man, he would go out and have his music, and he would, you know, pick up bands, you know, for house bands for wherever he was working at.
Now, back in those days, who were the guys that you would go out to check out, that you wanted to go hear?
It's hard to say, man, because there was one guitarist that around town by the name of George Davis. Okay. He wrote a song called "Tell It Like It Is" for Aaron Neville. Yeah. You know, he was a hero of mine, man. You know, for local guy. You know, and he was a very talented guy. It was amazed me at his how scholastically educated he was musically. Yeah. I mean, he read prolifically, man. He played bass, guitar, saxophone, keyboard. I mean, all at the same level. You know what I mean? He was just a great musician. He died a few years ago. But there wasn't too many. There was a lot of guitar players around town. People like, I mean, if I mention a name, you probably wouldn't even know him.
Yeah. What about Snooks?
Snooks, Snooks definitely, you know. Yeah. And there's a guy, Ernest McLean, Curtis Trevine, Justin Adams. Yeah. Those are people, Roy Montreal. Those are people that you probably wouldn't even know, but they like kind of shaped, you know, before I came along, you know, like the New Orleans scene in terms of recording, you know, with the slipping and sliding with the Little Richard, you know, the Earl Palmers, you know, and
So who would you say maybe outside of New Orleans, just in general, in terms of guitar players, some of your biggest influences?
I listen to everybody. You know, I've always considered myself. I mean, I listen. You know, Hendrix. I mean, you can't come up without listening to a guy like Hendrix. Not too much because of his. He wasn't a great guitar player, but he was an innovator. Sure. You know, when you heard Hendrix, you heard Hendrix. You know, and I always admired that about him. Yeah. And there's few guys around that's like that. And maybe you hear Clapton, you know it's him. Right. If you hear Santana, you know it's Santana. Right. And I've always liked to get a little bit from everybody who I hear and try to incorporate it in Leo. And you know, I think I've developed a reputation that whatever people think about me as a guitarist, they know when they hear me, they're going to hear me. Yeah. And that's it. That's it. So I'm kind of I kind of like that. Yeah.
I had read somewhere, I think, that Middle of the Road on Fire on the Bayou, which is one of my favorite albums of all time, was inspired by Kenny Burrell.
Yeah. Kenny. I used to Kenny Burrell. That's the name. When I was doing my like, you know, shedding and people I listened at. Yeah. I listened to people like Kenny Burrell, Johnny Smith. Yeah. Charlie Christian. Yeah. A little, you know, when Wes Montgomery, of course, you know. And I've always wanted to be one of those guys, you know. I had a 175 Gibson. Yeah. I always wanted to be one of those guys, man, those star guitar players like the guy. And what happened was I started writing songs. So I think my songwriting kind of molded me into the kind of type of player that I am, you know. And a lot of people don't know that. From writing songs, you could, you know, it kind of changed. It put me in different genres, you know. I wasn't all jazz, you know. I started writing rock songs, funk songs, R&B, stuff like that. So I just heard it, you know. And I think that had a lot to do with the development of my personal sound. You know? Oh yeah, Kenny Burrell. I used to listen and put his stuff on 16 when it only had the records. Excuse me, the records, man.
Yeah.
And you slow it down to the 16 thing.
Yeah.
Doo, doo, and it's copy them solos, you know, and stuff like that. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, man. Now, were you self-taught?
Yeah, basically.
Okay, cool.
I educated myself to the point where I could read. You know, but basically, I never went to school for it or anything like that.
Okay.
I just went about it the hard way, you know. Got me some books and stood in while everybody else was out chasing chicks and whatever, and drinking wine on the corner, smoking weed. I was in my room. Okay, all right, that's where I go. You know, so it was a sacrifice for me to do that, but you know, I'm glad I did it.
Did that help you with session work in New Orleans?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
You know, when you're doing session and you have somebody have a song, you have to be able to have the foresight to understand what if it's not written out, you have to be able to understand what they're saying or what they're trying to comprehend to you, where you could be able to do it and project it on the tape.
Yeah.
You know, so you have to be the more educated you are. I think that's the more better you could be in the studio.
Definitely.
Yeah, no doubt.
So back to like the early meter session and other early New Orleans sessions, did you have a favorite rig and a favorite specific acts you were using?
I had like I said, I played a 175, because I always wanted to be a jazz guy.
Yeah.
So I played that. I played, you know, sessions with that. I played funk gigs. You know, in New Orleans, I think what make New Orleans musicians special is because just as a way of survival, I would do like 4 gigs, man. I would go from one gig to the other, different genres of music. Like I'd go do a jazz gig, and then about 2 hours after that, I'd go do a R&B gig, which is, you know, they didn't call it funk then, they called it R&B.
Yeah.
Then I might go on Bourbon Street and play some Dixieland.
Really?
Yeah. So I would do like 4 different genres of music, like almost every day, just as a way of survival. But by doing that, it kind of instilled, or incorporating all those different types of music, man. It you know, and it came all into one. It made whatever I am, you know. That's what made me the kind of music that I was projecting, because it's a combination of everything. When I play, you know, I could be playing some funk stuff, man, and you'll hear some fusion.
Sure.
You know. You might hear some country in it somewhere, you know, and with the funk artist, there's a DVD that I have out called "Using It and Fusing It." It's like all the different genres of music and fusing it all together.
Yeah.
So I think that's, you know, if you describe me, I think I'm one of them kind of guys.
Yeah.